James Walker had just wrapped up another long day at work. The sound of his phone pinging constantly, the endless emails and meetings had drained him. He glanced at the time, realizing it was already 5:30 p.m. His son, Leo, was due to finish soccer practice in half an hour, and his daughter, Emma, had been counting the minutes until he could pick her up. It had been a hectic day, but like most evenings, it ended with the same routine: picking up the kids, getting groceries, and figuring out what to make for dinner. It was always a juggling act, one that he had grown used to over the past few years. James had been a single father since his wife, Anna, passed away unexpectedly. It had been 3 years, and while the pain of losing her hadn't entirely gone away, he had found a rhythm in the chaos. Every day was a balancing act, but he was determined to give Leo and Emma the best he could. He had learned to embrace the mess, the exhaustion, and the unpredictability of parenthood. But some days, it felt like it was all catching up to him. He pulled up to the soccer field, his old sedan rattling as he parked. Leo was already running toward the car, his soccer bag slung over his shoulder. The 8-year-old was a bundle of energy, always excited about the next practice or game. Emma, his 6-year-old daughter, was waiting by the gate. She had a book clutched in her hands, her mind already in a different world as she read, something she often did to escape the chaos of daily life. "Hey, buddy, how was practice?" James asked, opening the passenger door. "Good," Leo replied, dropping his bag into the back seat. "We won. I scored a goal." "Nice job," James said, ruffling his son's hair. "Emma, how was your day?" Emma looked up, a small smile forming on her face. "Good, Dad. I finished a whole chapter of my book." "That's awesome," James said, pulling out of the parking lot. He was already thinking about the grocery store. He was tired, but he had a mental list of things he needed to buy: spaghetti for Leo, something healthy for Emma, and a few staples for the week. He could already feel the pressure building up again. There was never enough time to do everything he wanted or needed to do. The grocery store was only a few miles away, and by the time they arrived, James had already started brainstorming dinner ideas. Spaghetti seemed like the easiest option for Leo, though Emma had been asking for salad with grilled chicken for days. The mental tug-of-war began as he navigated the parking lot, trying to make up his mind. He parked and got out, helping the kids with their seatbelts. "All right, let's grab some groceries and head home," he said, trying to sound upbeat. Emma clutched her book as she skipped into the store ahead of him, while Leo, always full of questions, followed closely behind. The automatic doors of the grocery store opened, and the cool air hit James's face, momentarily breaking the tension in his chest. He grabbed a cart, adjusting it as the kids hopped in and out, their voices bouncing off the walls. The store was busier than usual, with people hustling through the aisles, picking up last-minute items for dinner. James could feel the pressure building again as he mentally reviewed the list he'd left at home. Milk, bread, eggs, veggies. He needed to remember everything, but at the same time, he didn't want to miss out on anything Leo or Emma might ask for. As they navigated the aisles, James glanced over at the other shoppers. His thoughts were mostly occupied with dinner plans and the logistics of getting everything done by bedtime. He had just turned into the produce aisle when he saw her. The woman was standing in front of a lettuce display, her cart overflowing with bags of groceries. Her hands were full, and she seemed to be struggling with managing everything at once. The bags were weighing her down, and her face showed the familiar frustration James had felt 100 times before. She was in her mid-30s, with long brown hair tied loosely in a ponytail. She was dressed casually, wearing a comfortable sweater and jeans, but it was the apron over her clothes that caught his attention. It was a subtle sign that she had likely been at home preparing for the day before running out for a quick grocery run. Without thinking, James walked up to her, offering his help before she could even ask. "Can I help you with that?" he asked, offering a warm smile. The woman looked up, startled for a moment, her tired eyes locking onto his. She blinked and seemed to process his words before offering him a small, appreciative smile. "That would be great, thank you," she said softly, her voice betraying the exhaustion she was clearly feeling. James began unloading the groceries from her cart onto the conveyor belt. He could tell she was trying to keep it together, but the weight of the bags and the load of daily life was clearly taking its toll. As they moved toward the checkout, James made a light-hearted attempt to ease the awkwardness that could sometimes come with these types of encounters. So, is this your usual grocery haul, or did you just pick up everything in sight? He asked with a chuckle. The woman laughed, a soft, tired sound. I wish it was that easy. I'm just trying to keep up with everything. My daughter is only a few months old, so I'm juggling a lot. A baby? Wow, that's a lot to handle, James replied, nodding sympathetically. I've got 2 kids of my own. Leo's in soccer, and Emma's always reading something new. It's always a balancing act. She gave him a weary but genuine smile. I can imagine. It's not easy, is it? James shook his head. Definitely not. I'm constantly trying to figure out how to do everything right, but some days I feel like I'm barely holding it together. She paused for a moment, glancing down at the groceries before looking back at him. It's not easy at all. But my daughter, Lily, she's my world. I just want to give her the best I can, even when it's hard. That's the thing, isn't it? James replied, we all want the best for our kids, no matter what. The conversation shifted as they made their way through the checkout line. They spoke briefly about their kids' routines and the challenges of being single parents, each silently acknowledging the weight of the other's words. By the time they were done paying for their groceries, James had already offered to help carry her bags to the car. At first, she hesitated, but then, recognizing the sincerity in his offer, she agreed. They walked together, the sound of their footsteps the only noise between them. James glanced over at her as they walked, noticing the kindness in her eyes and the way her smile seemed to soften despite the exhaustion she clearly felt. When they reached her car, she turned to him, still holding the bags in her arms. Thank you, James. You didn't have to do this, she said, her voice sincere. James smiled, feeling a small but real connection. No problem at all. It's the least I could do. Good luck with everything, Sarah. They exchanged a few more pleasantries before he waved goodbye, watching her drive away. As he stood there for a moment, James realized that it was rare to meet someone like Sarah, someone who seemed genuine, kind, and down to earth. He didn't know what it was, but something about her felt different. In the whirlwind of daily life, it was a reminder that kindness, even in the smallest gestures, could go a long way. The following week, James found himself in the grocery store again. The same hectic rhythm of his day had carried over from the week before, and as always, he felt the weight of his responsibilities bearing down on him. It was a blur of phone calls, emails, and tasks that seemed to multiply the moment he crossed one off the list. After picking up Leo and Emma from their after-school activities, they all made their way to the store to pick up the groceries for the week. James maneuvered his cart through the aisles, trying to stay focused despite his growing exhaustion. Emma was already in the produce section, selecting apples and oranges with a sense of urgency, while Leo stood by the cereal aisle, debating which box of sugary breakfast treats to add to the cart. As he grabbed a bunch of bananas, he caught sight of a familiar face near the store entrance. It was Sarah. She stood by the entrance with a child in her arms, a little girl who appeared to be around 2 years old. The child had big dark eyes and a head full of thick, curly hair. She was clutching a stuffed bunny to her chest, her small fingers wrapped tightly around it. The sight was endearing, and James couldn't help but smile. Sarah, he called out, unable to contain the excitement of seeing her again. Sarah turned at the sound of his voice, her eyes lighting up in recognition. James, it's so good to see you again, she greeted, her voice carrying the same warmth that had struck him the first time they met. James walked toward her, pausing for a moment to glance down at the little girl in her arms. This must be Lily, he said, his smile widening as he kneeled down to meet the toddler's gaze. Sarah nodded, a soft smile tugging at her lips. Yes, this is Lily, she replied. I was just picking up a few things for dinner. It's been one of those days, you know? I completely understand, James said, with a chuckle. You know, my kids have been running me ragged too. Leo's all about soccer, and Emma can't put her books down for even a minute. He smiled as he straightened up. You're doing a great job, Sarah. Lily is adorable. Sarah's smile wavered for just a moment, and James noticed a subtle shift in her demeanor. For a brief second, she seemed almost distant, like there was something on her mind that she was trying to hold back. He waited for her to respond, unsure if he had said something that had made her uncomfortable. "Thank you," Sarah said after a brief pause, her voice quieter than before. She looked down at Lily, who was now resting her head on her mother's shoulder, her eyes fluttering as if she were ready for a nap. "Actually, there's something I need to tell you." James straightened up, his curiosity piqued. "What's going on, Sarah? You know you can tell me anything." Sarah's eyes met his, and there was an intensity in her gaze that made his heart skip a beat. She seemed hesitant, like she was weighing the best way to reveal something that was weighing heavily on her mind. "James, you're a good man," she began, her voice tinged with sincerity. "You've been so kind to me, and I've been thinking a lot about how to explain this. It's not easy for me to say." James was taken aback by her words. "What are you talking about, Sarah? You're fine, don't worry about it. If there's something on your mind, I'm here for you." She took a deep breath, her fingers nervously playing with the straps of Lily's diaper bag. "I've been thinking a lot about how to explain this. It's important, but I want you to understand why I've done this." Before James could respond, Sarah pulled out a small piece of paper from her bag. It was an official-looking document with a wax seal James didn't immediately recognize. She handed it to him, and his stomach dropped when he saw the words on the paper. The tone of the moment had shifted drastically, and an uneasy feeling crawled up his spine. "What is this?" he asked, his heart suddenly racing as he turned the letter over in his hands. Sarah's expression grew even more serious. "I'm not just anyone, James," she said softly. "I'm the head of the city's child services department. I've been working undercover on a project about single-parent households. I've been trying to understand the struggles they face, how they manage the challenges, and what kind of support they really need. And when I met you, I realized I couldn't just stay on the sidelines anymore." James felt his breath catch in his throat. His mind was reeling, trying to make sense of what she was saying. He looked down at the paper in his hands, still unable to fully grasp the magnitude of her revelation. You're the head of child services?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "But you've been—" Sarah nodded slowly, her gaze not leaving his. "I know this might be hard to believe, but yes, I've been working undercover for months now. My goal has been to observe families firsthand and learn what it's really like for single parents. And when I met you, I couldn't help but want to know more. You've shown me more kindness than I ever expected, and it's made me reconsider a lot of things about this whole project." James stood there, stunned, his mind struggling to absorb the weight of her words. He had been helping a stranger, a single mother, thinking she was just like him. But now the truth was coming to light. Sarah hadn't been an ordinary mother at all. She had been watching him, observing his every move. "Wait, so you've been working undercover this whole time?" James stammered, his voice shaking with disbelief. Sarah smiled softly, but there was a trace of sadness in her eyes. "I know it's difficult to understand, but yes, I've been trying to understand the real lives of single parents, the ones who don't have the resources or support they need. I didn't want to just read reports or look at statistics. I wanted to see what it was really like. And when I met you, James, I realized how important it was to see the human side of this work." James shook his head in confusion. "But why approach me like this? Why not just tell me from the start?" Sarah's shoulders slumped slightly as she sighed. "Because I didn't want you to feel like you were part of an investigation. I didn't want you to think that you were just another case to study. But the more I watched you, the more I realized how much you were doing for your kids. You've been doing everything right. You've been trying so hard, and I couldn't stay on the sidelines anymore." There was a long pause between them, and James struggled to wrap his mind around everything she had just shared. His mind flashed back to their first meeting, the way they had connected over the shared struggles of parenthood. All of that had been a lie, or at least not the full truth. Finally, James broke the silence. Does this mean you're not going to report me or something? He asked, his voice shaky. Sarah shook her head firmly. No, James. That's not why I'm here. I wanted to help, not harm. You're doing an amazing job. You're an incredible father, and I wanted you to know that. I didn't want you to feel like you were being judged. James looked down at Lily, who had fallen asleep in her mother's arms. Her tiny fingers curled around her stuffed bunny. He smiled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. Well, if this is all a big investigation, I hope I get a good review, he said, trying to lighten the mood. Sarah chuckled softly. You've definitely earned an A+ for effort, she replied. And in that moment, as they shared a quiet laugh, James realized that life had a way of surprising him when he least expected it. Sometimes that surprise came in the form of an unexpected encounter, one that would change everything he thought he knew.